Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Currott Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2008 Christmas comedy titled Four Christmases. Now, people are going to be wondering, why am I doing a Christmas review in the middle of May? Shouldn't I be doing something more like spring-like or something summer-like? I could if I want. But hey, it's my channel, I could do what I want. And if I want to do a Christmas movie in the middle of May, so be it. Anyhow, enough of that. The runtime for this movie is 1 hour and 29 minutes long. And besides being that this movie is called Four Christmases and it's a Christmas movie, to be honest with you, this movie does not actually bring out the best in the holiday season, and I will be more than happy to get on with that. The director of this movie is Seth Gordon. Yeah, I don't think a name like Seth Gordon sounds something of the Christmas persuasion. Anyhow, enough of that. The script was written by Matt R. Allen, Caleb Wilson, John Lucas, and Scott Moore. It is produced by Gary Barber, Jonathan Glickman, and Roger Birnbaum. You would think that for a Christmas movie, you would have more. It wouldn't be produced by Jewish guys. Anyhow, the story was written by Matt R. Allen and Caleb Wilson. It was composed by Alex Werman, the cinematography by Jeffrey M. Kimball, and it was edited by Mark Helfrich and Melissa Kent. And the stars of the movie are Vince Vaughn, Reese Witherspoon, Robert Duvall, Mary Steenburgen, Sissy Spacek, John Voight, John Favreau, Tim McGraw, Dwight Yoakam, Kristin Chenoweth, Katy Mixon, Carol Kane, Colleen Camp, Jack Donner, but no Blitzen, just kidding, Steve Webby, Skyler Gisondo, Patrick Van Horn, Brian Baumgartner, Cedric Yarbrough, Haley Hallak, and True Bella Princi, plus also a cameo from one of the actors who starred in probably one of the greatest Christmas movies ever. I'm talking A Christmas Story back in 1983. Yes, we're talking Ralphie himself, Peter Billingsley. And if you don't may have remembered him as Ralphie from A Christmas Story, you may have remembered him from the Hershey's chocolate syrup commercials. Yes, that's right, Messy Marvin himself. So anyways, in 2007, director Seth Gordon made the hugely popular indie drama The King of Kong. So that means that the Hollywood industry decided to take advantage of this up-and-coming young director in order to make a directionless movie that lacks very, very little in holiday cheer. In fact, this movie seems to actually sort of takes you out of the holiday spirit, as opposed to like bringing you into the holiday spirit. And I think mostly it's because a grand majority of the characters come across as being one-note, unlikable, and mean-spirited. Even though they seem like they don't really actually know that they're being mean-spirited. But I really, really think that they could have had at least one likable character. I don't know, maybe I'm missing a few things here, but I don't know. I just found it to be, nothing cheery about it. Sometimes I even think that this movie didn't even really get too much Christmas spirit into this movie. And they call this movie Four Christmases. And I think most of the fault that comes here, the red herring, is that I think that there were just too much ingredients to spoil the taste. Or maybe even to put into better words, too many cooks spoiled the broth. Because in this movie, like I mentioned before, there were 4 people who wrote the script. And they must have thrown all their ideas into one basket, and they decided to just use them all so that nobody's feelings could get hurt. Well, I got news for you. Too fucking bad. Because listen to me. People's feelings are going to get hurt. If they could have just downsized it to maybe 1 or 2 screenwriters, maybe this movie could have been better. But instead they decided to just cram everybody's ideas into one, just so that they can all come home happy, so that they won't be left out, so that they won't be like, boo, you like my script. Oh, cry me a river. I mean, this is what happens when too many script writers put all their ideas into one. Sometimes I think 4 Christmases could have easily been just reduced to maybe 2 at the most, instead of 4. Now, there's a reason why this movie is called 4 Christmases. But like I said, there's not really much Christmassy about this movie. The final result is that it is an uneven mess of a holiday movie, and it just seems like it can't decide whether it wants to be, a joyous holiday film with some slapstick humor to keep us intrigued, or if it wants to be taken as a bittersweet drama with a moral passage subliminally hidden behind the narrative of the movie, one that has some kind of a moral theme to it. But there really isn't much of a moral theme in this movie, because nobody really ever learns anything in this movie. The protagonists in this movie, well, this movie doesn't really have any full-blown, full-fleshed antagonists, because even the protagonists in this movie tend to have a lot of unlikability, just as much as the other antagonists in this movie, who are not really actually antagonists. They're just extended family members who seem to adapt to a lot of unlikable traits. So there really is no black and white in this movie. I think it's just gray and dark gray. And that's the kind of feeling I get in this movie. In the end, the film will leave you unsatisfied and flabbergasted by just how laboring this movie is to watch. I mean, in the beginning and the middle scenes, the movie goes the direction of madcap slapstick humor in a very similar vein, like the 1989 National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, with dysfunctional families, quick-paced humor, and very absurd misadventures within the parameters of the extended families, and the 2 leading stars, Reese Witherspoon and Vince Vaughn, being caught in the middle of all this kerfuffle. But you know what? This is kind of like something that I have noticed a lot in modern day Christmas movies. It seems that every movie that centers around the Christmas holidays is always about everything seems to go wrong. Everything just turns into one big bloated disaster, and then in the end, everything just settles. Like one big happy little package, one big little happy present with a nice golden bow. And some Christmas cheer at the end. But then you have to sort of sit through all the laboring initiatives while watching everything just go out of control. You get that in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. You get that in Home Alone. You get that in Christmas with the Cranks. You get that in Love the Coopers. You get that in Jingle All the Way. You get that in almost every holiday-themed movie. Everything seems to go wrong, and then once you get around to the last final act of the movie, everybody just settles. And it all ends in a happy ending. It also can go back to the golden age, like It's a Wonderful Life. In that movie, everything goes wrong for George Bailey, and then at the end, then everything just falls into place, and everything ends with a very bittersweet ending. Now, I'm not saying that Christmas movies all have to end with an unhappy ending. No. I don't want that to happen either. Christmas should be a time of happiness. But why can't they stay happy the whole time? I mean, why is it that all these disasters that happen in Christmas movies give you the idea that instead of just, like making Christmas such a happy time, turning out to be anything but, it doesn't help you gain the happiness of the holiday spirit. It takes you back, and it doesn't make me feel happy inside. It makes me feel sad, and it also makes me feel very, very angry. Well, not angry in the sense that I'm gonna go unhinged or go on a hissy fit. No. But it just makes me very upset to see things like that. I mean, not all holidays bring out the worst in you. In some ways it does. I mean, I can understand that, if you lost a relative on the holiday season, it does have some kind of effect on you. That's perfectly understandable. I feel your pains. But at the same time, Christmas is supposed to be a joyous season, but these Hollywood movies don't make you feel that way too. Even the animated stuff too doesn't always have happiness in it either. Charlie Brown Christmas. Charlie Brown's not happy because Christmas has gone too commercial and wanted to find ways to bring the old spirit of the holiday season back. He's out to find the true meaning of Christmas. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. He had to go through all kinds of ridicule and insulting before finally becoming respected. And it only came around near the end where he actually became the hero. Yeah, I know to keep the narrative going, you kind of have to have some levels of conflict, I understand. But in reality, it's not like that. So by the time you get to the third act, 4 Christmases, with all the madcap insanity, gets swiped away without hesitation. So the first 3 families that we go to, everything just falls flat. And then by the time you get to the 4th family, it turns out to be more magical. The audience's enthusiasm for more laughs results in them getting impatient, and then they start to wonder, when will this movie end? I mean, like I said, the first 2 families they go to is pure madcap slapstick fun, and then by the time you get to the 3rd act, it becomes less funny, and the 4th one, it becomes more dramatic. Oh, and by the way, don't put a baby on Kate's arm. Chances are they're likely going to retch. And sometimes the vomit is seen on camera, which is quite disgusting, and I don't want to talk anymore about that. But unfortunately, it happens. And maybe I will eventually bring that up. But then again, why should I bring that up when the babies are the more likely to bring it up? If you know what I mean. So, Four Christmases opens up the movie set in a bar where Kate and Brad, played of course by Reese Witherspoon and Vince Vaughn, looks like they were playing role-playing, even though at first glance I thought this is how they first met each other. But no, they were doing like role-playing. And I don't see where it was really going with this. Okay, so these two are a couple of rich yahoos. And it seems that the opening scene lacks anything that might be ceremonious. And they also go to a dance club, and you know, one of their members starts asking them, when are you guys going to get married? Well, it appears as though if Kate and Brad have been shacking up with each other for the last 3 years, their boyfriend and girlfriend, and they have no interest in wanting to get married or even have children. But sometimes the way they act towards people in life, you would think that they would be in their 20s, when really it appears that Kay and Brad seem to be mid-30s, and yet they sometimes tend to act almost like late teens, early 20-somethings. You know, kind of on the immature side, when really they're in their mid-30s, and yet they tend to act almost like pre-adult adolescents, like 19, 20-year-olds. They still remain a couple, like I said, not married, don't have any children. They're rich and they're successful. And usually every year, during the Christmas holidays, they tend to go on vacation. Now you're thinking, why? And now, of course, you probably will think, well, geez, didn't the McAllisters go to France in the first Home Alone and Florida in the second Home Alone? Yeah, but that's a whole different story. Why them? They don't have... Well, the reason why is because they do it just so that they could avoid going to their families for the holiday season. Because practically they're embarrassed by their families. And they just want to avoid them as much as possible. Part of the reason you can fully understand why. But they're doing this mostly because, like I said, they're immature. But at the same time, I also find them to be I find them to be a lot selfish in their reasons why. They just don't want any contact with their family members. And that's selfish. But they do it anyway. They come up with all these kind of lame excuses. Especially Vince Vaughn, who said that, you know, when they went to go to Burma, they wanted to kind of go there to adopt refugee babies. You know, pull off kind of like an Angelina Jolie type of thing. But then, of course, their parents probably see to this as, oh, it's just bullshit. This is all just some fucking excuse just to get away from them. So this time around, their flight has been cancelled because of the fog. Then one foggy Christmas Eve. No. Anyhow, their planes got cancelled in. Brad and Kate are not so bright. Spend your holidays with family tonight. Yes, apparently their flight has been cancelled because of fog. And they also got caught on the 6 o'clock news.
They did?
Yes, they did.
What did they do?
Well, a reporter questioned them as to what was their purpose of going on that flight.
Oh.
Okay, their trip was they were supposed to go to Fiji, but then their flight got canceled. So now, because they got caught on the 6 o'clock news, their parents called. And they want them to have Christmas dinner with them. Now, the reason why it's called Four Christmases is because both set of parents are divorced.
Oh, no.
So they have to go to each other's parents' house for Christmas. The first stop is his father, and then her mother, and then his mother, and then her father.
That's too much.
So yes, they're not going on one Christmas dinner, not 2 or 3, but 4 Christmases. Hence the title.
Okay.
So now they have to sort of face the music and get it over with. There's no options with them. Oh, and your trip to Fiji? Forget it. Okay.
Don't start that.
So they start off by going to Brad's father's house, and Brad's father is played by Robert Duvall. And Brad's family kind of like live in the gorgeous mountainside areas, but they kind of have sort of a bit of a redneck type background about them. Or they kind of have a bit of a roughshod, almost like semi-redneck type lifestyle. Oh, and by the way, Brad's name isn't really Brad. His name is Orlando. Oh, and his brothers are named Denver and Dallas. Now people are wondering, what's the big deal about why Brad refers to himself as Brad and not by his real name, Orlando? It's because Brad's father tells them that the reason why his sons are named Denver, Dallas, and Orlando is because that's the name of the cities they were born in when they were conceived. Interesting. Maybe my parents should have named me after our street names that we were born in. Right. In other words, maybe my name should be Duff Rider. Duff.
Duff?
Yeah.
The hell does that mean?
Well, I was born on Duff Court.
Oh, okay.
May as well just call me Ass. Ass Rider.
What do they call your court?
No. Anyhow, no. But that's something that Brad should have told Kate. You see, the thing is if they've known each other for 3 years, they should have known each other's secrets. You see, this is the thing about going to their family's home for the holidays, is because eventually a lot of secrets will be unleashed. And one of them was that Brad's real name isn't really Brad, it's Orlando. But things also seem to not always go right with the family either. I mean, his brothers, Denver and Dallas, are a little bit rough on him. When they show up at the door, they have him pinned to the ground and putting him in wrestling holds and almost like choke out submission holds. You see, because both Denver and Dallas, they're professional cage fighters. So I guess they're probably like either MMA or UFC or I don't know, something like within that parameter. So yeah. And yeah, they had when they were children, they used to really team up on him a lot. And even their kids are not exactly, that kind to Uncle Orlando or Brad or whatever the fuck it was. I'm just gonna call him Brad since he wants to be Brad. Fine. Okay. And then when it came to like the exchanging gifts, they were supposed to be within a $10 limit. So while who was it? Was it Dallas or Denver? I think it's Dallas. Jon Favreau's character gives his son a present, and it's some kind of like cheap flashlight that you would get at a dollar store. However, Brad, he goes out of his way and gives him a cool present. Something that's costs more than $10. He gives his nephew an Xbox. They did mention a $10 limit. Instead, he gives him an expensive present. And of course, one of the brothers, of course, is not very happy with Brad's gift. And then Brad says something about, Santa doesn't exist. And of course, his nephew gets so pissed off, he strips off his clothes and starts streaking outside. But of course, that's just a temporary phase. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Katy Mixon, of course, is Jon Favreau's wife. She's the only one who looks like she's dressed for the holidays. She's baking a casserole in the kitchen with Kate. And while they're doing that, she's breastfeeding the baby. Even though I think that's kind of a foolhardy thing to do. You can't do two things at once. You can't breastfeed a baby while cook a casserole. Anyhow. And then Brad also gives his father a rather expensive present too. Remember, Brad and Kate are super rich. And it's a satellite dish. And, his father insists that he go up there and install the dish, but Brad insists that he should have a professional, and Robert Duvall's character says, no, I don't want some guy sneaking into my house looking into my underwear drawer. So he makes Brad go up there to install the dish, but then Brad eventually falls off the roof and destroys the television while also this is happening. Kate accidentally hits the baby, and eventually all hell breaks loose. And this gives Brad and Kate the opportunity to say goodbye to Brad's father's house and make it their next destination. And their next destination is to go to Kate's mother's place. So, Kate's mother is played by Mary Steenburgen. And, yeah, she is, okay, Kate wanted to remind Brad that, of course, she's not happy with the fact that he never told her that her real name is Orlando. But then we also realize that Kate herself has not always been that honest to Brad. So once we go inside Kate's mother's house, we realize that she's also has a few dark skeletons in her closet too, which also sets a bit of an alarm for both ends of the spectrum. In other words, Kate, congratulations! You're the next contestant on You're No Better! Okay. So, yeah, apparently Kate's mother, along with her sister, played by Kristin Chenoweth, well, let's face it, they all seem to be what Kate likes to refer to them as cougars. You know how what a cougar is like, a meaning of a cougar is that they tend to get a little bit on the seductive side with Brad. And of course, they also reveal some dark secrets to Kate's past. But then again, when you invite a wife or a girlfriend to your Christmas parties, you know, of course parents are going to reveal embarrassing stories to their children. My mom too would probably have a field day telling embarrassing stories of my childhood. And no, I'm not gonna lie to you, I've been in pretty embarrassing situations where I've embarrassed myself and I've embarrassed them. But then again, those are some of the most memorable stories. But anyhow, yes, many dark stories come from Kate's past. Like when she was a child, you know how Reese Witherspoon is kind of like a voluptuous, rather thinly framed individual? Well, when she was young, she was kind of bloated. And she used to get picked on due to her obesity when she was young. And she was also nicknamed Cootie Kate. And because of her obesity, she was also sent to fat camp, where she had a friendship with someone who appears to be one of those butch lesbians and was rumored to have been in a lesbian relationship, although it has not been confirmed. Maybe they were just platonic friends, but nothing more, nothing less. I mean, I'm not going to be the one to judge. Anyhow, that kind of joke and that kind of shtick is definitely, you know, out of date, you know, because picking on somebody because of their weight, you know, that's fat shaming. And also the judgments about whether she was in this relationship with this tomboyish girl is also not completely fully justified, and also not very convenient if you want to put it in the verisimilitude of humor. So it's not really, so you know, that kind of humor is a little bit disrespectful. Also some other things about her family is her mother is in some relationship with some kind of pastor named Pastor Phil, played by another country music star. You may know him as Dwight Yoakam. Yeah, we had a couple of country stars, you know, one of Brad's brothers is played by country star Tim McGraw. Here we also had Dwight Yoakam, who also is a pretty well-polished actor in his own rights too. Anyhow, then she also goes into the bathroom because, you know, unfortunately, once again, we had another baby that, well, no, she was still wearing her Christmas blouse that still has puke splatters from the baby that barfed on her, so they made her go change into wearing one of those 80s style ugly sweaters. You know, something taken from Cliff Huxtable's closet.
Ooh.
You know those cardigan woolen sweaters that we used to wear in the 80s?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that. Anyhow, yeah, so then she goes into the bathroom and it looks like she takes like one of those pregnancy tests to actually see if the results are positive or negative. But then the girl, I think her name was Casey or Cassie, she eventually takes it because she thought it was some kind of measuring stick. And so then it leads her to a chase. And it leads them to going into some kind of bouncy castle where she's surrounded by a whole bunch of other kids. And they start chasing her, so then Kate starts chasing these kids, you know, just to get that pregnancy stick, whatever it is, into her own hands. Even going as far off as to, like, throw them around, even though these kids themselves are pretty agile and athletic themselves. And then the little girl decides to put her tongue on it, and then she says, I wouldn't have done that if I were you, because before you put your tongue on that, I had it in my centerpiece, and she got sickened by it. Which is actually not a complete lie. I mean, I think for women who do take those kind of pregnancy tests, do put the pregnancy test in places where let's try and keep this broadcast clean. I do have my limits. So then we come to the next house. This time we go to oh wait, before they go to Brad's mom's, I forgot to mention, then because her mother is also some kind of deeply devoted Christian, they go to Pastor Phil's church, which almost has a bit like, it's supposed to come across as being sort of Baptist, I suppose, but it seems like it's got a much more non-conventional, almost cultish-like figures towards it. Something like that. And then they wanted Brad and Kate to do the nativity story. Oh boy, this is where we get into some blasphemy. And just so behold, and make things worse, is that Brad and Kate were chosen to play the roles as Joseph and Mary. And my god, this is where Vince Vaughn goes into full ad-lib city, where he completely ad-libs the nativity scene and puts his own interpretations in there, which of course is, you know, like it's almost like blasphemy. Well, it is blasphemy. But you know, especially, you know, telling the baby that they need more swaddling, or I don't know. It was just a convoluted mess. And to all you overzealous religious fanatics out there, if you're cringing or you fainted on the floor with all this blasphemy, I don't blame you. Or to all those who have fainted on the floor, get a hold of yourself. It's a movie. It's fiction. But still, you know. But I still think that's probably one of the most cringe-inducing scenes going. And it's not because of the religion thing, but because it just was just over the top. But at least we next go to Brad's mom's house. Hallelujah. And holy shit.
Holy shit.
Where's my aspirin?
Where's your aspirin?
Taking quotes from Christmas Vacation. Then we go over to Brad's mom's house, where his mother, played by Sissy Spacek. We got some big Hollywood names here. I mean, I was mentioning Robert Duvall, Mary Steenburgen, Sissy Spacek. Yeah, we got big names here. So she is happy to meet. Of course, you know, as time goes on, Brad and Kate start to become more and more resentful to each other, even more. Like, you never told me your name was Orlando. Well, you never told me you were called Cootie Kate, and you never told me that you were a fat kid in school who had a lesbian friend. So what makes you any better than me? So along the way they argue. So now they go to Brad's mom's house. And after her divorce, she had moved forward and got remarried. Is that a bad thing? No. But in his case, I'm afraid I'm going to have to make an exception. It is a bad thing. I mean, it's not a bad thing if it wasn't that someone who Brad once considered a best friend since childhood, who is practically 20 years younger than her, maybe older. I mean, it's like 1 minute he was his best friend in school, and now all of a sudden he's become an honorary stepfather. And yeah, we were once chums in elementary school, and now you're married to my mom, and she's practically almost like 20, maybe 25 years older than you. And if you think that that's any better, wait till you see the infamous Taboo scene. Now, I know Taboo is some kind of a fun game. Oh, and also one of the brothers from Brad's father's, Jon Favreau's character is back in there again. And he's also there with his wife. And they're playing Taboo together while he's also eating his chicken wings. Ugh, chicken wings. Never mind, okay. Anyhow, Jon Favreau's character and Katy Mixon, they're practically dominating their game of Taboo. You know, they seem to know each other's answers very well. They seem to know each other very well. But when it came to Brad and Kate's turns to play Taboo, they haven't got a clue as to know each other very well. It's like they shack up, they've known each other for almost 3 years, and they still don't know who each other were. It's like 3 years of being strangers in the same bed. It's like, you would think that after 3 years they would know a lot about each other, but then it realizes that they really know shit about each other. And this just spins the apple core to even more deeper resentment. Although I will say that Brad's mom's house was a little more brief compared to the other two. Oh, but we still got one more family to go to. Kate's father's house. Now, before they walk in, they're really arguing with each other. By now, they almost want to just come to a point where they are almost on the brink of breaking up. So finally, when they go to Kate's door, Kate says, I just can't stop pretending to be in love with someone who I hardly know or who I probably hardly love, or to pretend that we're in love with each other when really we don't know each other from Adam. So I'll just go in on my own. You don't need to be there. Let's just stop pretending we're in love with each other when we really don't even know each other as well as we all thought. So then we go into Kate's father's house, and then all of a sudden the atmosphere is like different than the other three. Where it's not chaotic, there's no resentment, there's no mean-spiritedness. His family Her mother's there, her sister's there, the rest of the other family members are there, Pastor Phil is there, and they're all sitting, gathering at a table. They're all dressed in traditional, like, Christmassy, like, clothing and apparel. It actually really does feel like a Christmas. Maybe the only scene in the movie that actually has some level of Christmas cheer. But of course, Brad is not just gonna just sit there in the car by himself and wait till she comes out. So he decides to take this matter to go one more time back to his father's house. And, they sit down, they chat over a beer or something like that. And saying things, then his father gives some kind of bit of sage advice. And then eventually he realizes that he doesn't want to go through the same situation as what happened with his father and his mother's breakup. So then he goes over to Kate's father's to join in with the rest of their family. And then he starts to recollect and reconsider his ideology of about the whole idea of not getting married, to not having kids, to maybe we should get married, maybe we should have a kid or 2 or 3. I mean, families may not necessarily be perfect, which they're not. Not every family has a Pat Boone, My 3 Sons type of atmosphere. I mean, as much as we all love the perfect nuclear family, you hardly find any of that. I'm not saying that to be cynical or mean or anything, but it just comes a dime a dozen. There's a lot of dysfunctional families out there. And nobody's perfect. They're not perfect. But they're still family. And I think that's kind of like what the point of this movie is. But it's just that the way it was told was just really, really laboring. That's kind of like what it was. If they kind of just stuck with one narrative, sure, the whole everything goes wrong and then everything just turns itself around is a cliche. But if it's told and executed in a better format, maybe this movie could have been better. Or if it should have took some sort of a direction of where it wanted to go, maybe I would have liked this movie a lot more. So Jon Voight's character kind of becomes the voice of reason in an awkward effort to spread some kind of Aesop-like moral about being closer to your family, no matter how odd or dysfunctional they are. And she has this out of nowhere change of heart. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he, of course, decides he wants to, get into this whole family thing. And that he promises no secrets. But then the next year on New Year's Day, suddenly another secret was revealed. Yes, that's right, Brad and Kate gave birth. Oh, was it a boy or a girl? It was a girl. Oh, that's good. Not that good. What do you mean? The baby was born on New Year's Day. Oh, yeah, and it was the first baby born that year. So much for keeping secrets. Oh, yeah, and it also ends when the baby also throws up on Kate's shoulder. Because somehow I think Baby Vomit and Kate have some form of magnetism. Yeah, I know, I brought up a lot of barf. But so did the babies too. But then again, hey, when you're an infant, we all barfed a lot. Believe it or not, when I was a baby too, I barfed a lot. I think we all did. But then again, that just makes sense. I mean, we were babies. We had small stomachs and little appetites. It's only when you get older was when your appetite started to get bigger. Alright, you say this, but seriously now, on a serious note, the sad part about Four Christmases is that all the funny scenes seem to take place in the first household, which is at Brad's father's home in the countryside. It definitely had the energy and adrenaline, and felt at a level of chaos and manic to similar veins to Christmas Vacation. But through each family visit it gets less funny, and the final pit stop, it becomes melancholy. Bittersweet, but melancholy. Sure, its intention is to close the gap by offering the characters its lessons learned from the narrative. However, Four Christmases fails to deliver due to the underdeveloped characters. Not only is this movie under 90 minutes long, it's also very tedious that we know very little about Kate and Brad. But then again, Kate and Brad hardly really know each other, and they've been around with each other for 3 years. And we care very little about them too. There's little chemistry by the leading performers, and it was also a well-known fact that Kate Witherspoon and Vince Vaughn do not get along behind the cameras, and we get to actually sort of see that in the movie. We only have small fragments of backstory within their character arcs, and many of them is just, putting them in embarrassing situations of their past. And sure, this movie may have a happy ending for both Kate and Brad, albeit baby barf, but it's all just the life of the party gets taken away from us due to the movie's final 20 minutes, and it just becomes melodramatic and taxing to watch. And though it's okay to balance comedy and drama into your story, but we need the right balance. Even through some of the over-the-top slapstick scenes could use a little bit of some dramatic prose, and sometimes some of the dramatic stuff could use a bit of comedy. If you could try to blend those two together perfectly, it could need some work, and the only way for that to happen is we have to invest the characters of our leads. But since Brad and Kate are virtually underdeveloped, we don't need to change the genres of the film. And even though I had little regard for our two principal characters, it was the supporting cast that needed to be more invested, albeit appearing briefly. I mean, we could have known a little bit more about the relationships between Brad's parents and Kate's parents and why they divorced. We only get small little snippets, but that's about it. Vaughn and Witherspoon come across as tedious and dull and quite unlikable in their performances, especially Vince Vaughn, who's once again just playing his shtick of being loud, fast-talking, and obnoxious. While Witherspoon looks like she would rather be anywhere but here, since her main specialties is to be in more serious stuff. And we know just how dedicated she is as an actress, and she's an Oscar-winning performer too. By way of opposition, if there was any character that came across as my favorite, Jon Favreau, he practically steals every scene he's in as Brad's dim-witted brother, and he seems to be having the time of his life in his performance. Another actress, this movie seems more dependent on its supporting cast than its lead. I also got to give credit to Kristin Chenoweth. She may not embrace her singing chops here, but she does have a great level of perkiness. And Robert Duvall also shows why he is a legend in this movie business. He can do practically anything. This guy has been around since forever, and yet he can pull off another great performance. No matter how big or small he still can be. He is one of the reasons why he's one of the great legends in Hollywood, and he pulls off another great performance and makes the most of his limited time on screen. So, I am not saying that all the performers were bad. I just wish the leads could have been better. So every year around the Christmas season, theaters try to spice some holiday cheer by offering a movie that will hopefully get you in the holiday mood. However, most of the material they have to offer is a hit or a miss. This one is a big time miss. Not only is it a waste of time or unsatisfying, it's also tedious and disjointed. Sure, there are some funny moments, but they're all in the opening scenes. And after that, it becomes less fun to the point where you're just anxious as to when this will all come to a close. Over the years, we don't expect much from holiday-themed movies, and Four Christmases just sadly falls into that category. So, therefore, I can't really say I recommend this movie very much, I'm afraid. So, if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would have to give Four Christmases a 5 out of 10. Okay, so I'm losing my voice here, so I'm going to end this by saying thank you all for listening in. This ends my writer review. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. Just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments, and I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Correct Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.